Hi everyone, I'm Sara Kingsley, and today on behalf of my co-authors, I'm going to be presenting an audit of advertising on Facebook. Our motivating question for this audit was how are ads for economic opportunities distributed among demographic groups on Facebook? And by economic opportunities, we're specifically referring to ads for housing, employment, or credit. We also had a broader purpose in conducting this audit, which was to present a method and then also software toolkit that could enable independent researchers to audit advertising on social media platforms. In addition, we had the motivation to analyze advertising on Facebook because Facebook has been sued a number of times for discrimination in advertising for housing, employment, and financial services or credit in violation of civil rights law in the United States. Some of those lawsuits were settled, and as a result of the settlement, Facebook made certain changes to the ad portal. Specifically, Facebook added this special ad categories button to the ad portal and changed its policies so that, for example, if you're an advertiser and you're publishing an ad for credit, employment, or housing, you're now supposed to check this box, which has the effect of removing certain targeting options from the ad portal, such as age, gender, and then also zip code. Of note, in the United States, zip code is a proxy for race. So let's say I'm an employer and I have a job ad, and I go to the platform to publish that ad and I say, exclude everyone living in this zip code. I'm effectively excluding people from having access to that job opportunity by virtue of their race. So how did we go about our audit? Well, following the 2016 election, Facebook created an ad library in which ads published to the platform are archived. And so here's the front page of the ad library. And accompanying this ad library is an API that developers can use to download lots of ads. And so what we did is we used keywords to request ads from the API. By analogy, imagine I want to find some information about job opportunities. I might navigate to Google and type in the search terms hiring now. In response to typing in those search terms, Google will show me some information related to those search terms. And so we did something similar with the API to request ads, and I was going to quickly demonstrate that by opening up my terminal here on the right-hand side. And the first thing that I'm going to do is specify the parameters of my search. So I'm going to use the terms hiring now. I'm going to say that I want to request ads in the United States. And then per Facebook's policy, I'm going to limit the number of ads that I request in this request. And at this point, that will be 1,000 ads. So for convenience sake, I'm going to paste these search parameters into my terminal. And next, I'm going to actually make the request. And the request includes these parameters. And we'll give it a minute. Okay, great. Let's see what we got. So as I like to say, we have a mess of data, which includes data about the demographic distribution of the ads, as well as the geographic distribution. And we also get the text of advertisements and the advertiser's name, among other things. But we're presented with a problem, which is that this is unlabeled data, meaning that Facebook does not specify for us what type of ad each ad in that API response is. So what we did was we developed a classifier using a naive Bayes model in order to separate ads into categories of interest. And for us, that was housing, employment, credit, political, and other. And other simply refers to any ad that doesn't meet the definition of the other labels. Between October 2019 and May 2020, we collected more than 140,000 ads. We then used the classifier to label the ads. And after that, we were able to take the demographic distribution data that Facebook provides in order to analyze how each ads belonging to each category were distributed among demographic groups by age and gender. And quickly for an example ad, here's an employment ad that was published to Facebook by the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. And for example, the demographic data we get, we see this chart on the right, which shows us that this ad was only displayed to men, and any person over the age of 54 was not shown this ad. And so essentially we have more than 140,000 such similar ads, and we're analyzing this distribution data. Before moving on, I wanted to mention some related research in the literature, specifically advertising experiments. So what is an advertising experiment? Imagine I'm a researcher who doesn't have access to this API. How might I learn about how ads are distributed among users by demographic? Well, I could publish an ad to the platform, and then Facebook is going to give me data about how my ad was distributed since I'm an advertiser. Great, so we have some data. What's some limitation of this method? Well, I'm only getting data about the ads that I publish. I'm not getting data about ads that other advertisers publish. And so one of our goals for this audit was to contribute that knowledge to the literature. Through the API, we can get advertising data from many advertisers and advertisements published on the platform. And as mentioned, Facebook is subject to a number of lawsuits claiming that advertising on the platform violates civil rights laws in the United States. And in terms of the settlement, we're also wanting to know if the changes that Facebook made to the advertising portal were sufficient to curb discrimination that was previously observed. So what did we find? For credit ads, we found that on average, the ads, men were a greater proportion of the demographic that were shown credit ads. This was notable to us because for every other category of interest that we analyzed, women were a greater proportion of the demographic. In addition, in the United States, there are more women Facebook users than men. And some have hypothesized that the distribution of content on Facebook is explained by user demographics. And our finding about credit ads would not support that claim. And finally, I wanted to note that, so for any user who does not specify their gender to Facebook, they're classified as having an unknown gender, and on average, they receive nearly 0% of either credit, employment, or housing ads. So quickly, with employment ads, women were a greater proportion of the demographic that received those ads. In addition, we noticed that persons aged 25 to 34 were a greater proportion by age who received the ad, suggesting an age bias. With housing ads, we found something similar. Women were a greater proportion, and the ads were sent to more persons 25 to 34. So to sum up, we found significant bias against persons who were classified as having an unknown or custom gender. That can include persons who identify as non-binary and or transgender. Women were a larger percentage of the total demographic that received employment and housing ads. This was not true for credit ads. Men were a greater proportion of the population who received those ads, and we noticed some age bias for employment and housing ads. Some limitations I just wanted to quickly mention: using keywords might introduce bias. So we're using these keywords to collect ads, and that influences what kind of data we get in return. And of course, we use machine learning methods, which are never perfect. And while our classifier performed very well, again, it's not perfect. So I think I'll end on that note. We had some future work that we wanted to mention that would be interested in, but for the sake of time, I'll conclude with that.